Good evening and welcome to CellarPass TV. We are live this Thursday night and we have a wonderful, wonderful lineup. We have got John Bigelow from JM Cellars tonight sharing two delicious wines and of course the story of how they became JM Cellars. So without further ado, we'd like to introduce you to John Bigelow.
Hello, hello.
Hello and welcome. Cheers. Clink, clink, clink. How's it going?
Great. I am so honored to be here with everybody tonight. And we're actually shooting this from Palm Desert. I'm on vacation right now with my wife. And I can tell you, I'm very relaxed and happy to be where I'm at.
Wonderful. We are so glad you were able to join us and even do so from your vacation spot, getting some California sunshine. I totally am jealous. Can't wait to do it myself soon. Tell us a little bit about JM Cellars and how it came to be.
You know, it's a long story, and so I'll cut it down a little bit. I was originally in the high-tech world. I worked for IBM and then for a company called Sequent Computers, all the way up to about 1998. And that year, my wife and I were really fortunate because I had a big year and I thought I had enough money out of that commission that we had that year that I could quit my job and start a new business just with her. And she said, well, what business should we start? And I said, well, I'd really like to start a winery. And she said, well, that sounds great. Have you ever made wine? Well, no, I haven't, but I have two things going for me. One, I'm going to quit my job and do this full time. And anytime I've dedicated myself to anything in my life with 100% effort, I've always been able to do it. But probably more importantly, my brother-in-law is Mike Janik, who is one of the great American winemakers. He was at the time, the head winemaker for Chateau Ste. Michelle. And I really felt like he could give me the kind of impetus and the knowledge that I need where I wouldn't have to make a lot of the mistakes that maybe somebody starting brand new would make.
Yeah, that's really beneficial. That's awesome.
Just a great guy, super inspirational man. And he now has his own winery. It's called Janik Winery.
Right.
And his son, Andrew Janik, is now one of the winemakers there, which is really fun to see.
And really great wines as well, and a fabulous property to visit if you get the chance.
Really beautiful. So Mike was great. He gave me a recipe. He told me what to read, what books were the best books out there. And he told me what extension courses would be the best to take from UC Davis. And just to tell you how old this is, the extension courses were all on VHS. I had to watch very long, boring presentations on videotape. And I can tell you, I learned a little bit from those, but I learned a lot more by dedicating 1998, the summer, to being in the vineyards and meeting vineyard managers and vineyard owners and really learning from the vine up about winemaking. And I made my first wines in 1998. We did not actually release those to the public. I only made 100 cases, but it really gave me a chance to see, could I do this? What was the wine like? And the wine was pretty good. It really showed, I think, that if you start with great ingredients, you can really do a lot, even if you don't know that much. And I really lucked out and got some of the best fruit in the state for my finish. It was Clipson Vineyard up on Red Mountain. A really beautiful spot. So that's how I got started in 1998. And the next 24 years have been just an amazing experience, a journey. Lots of really fun things happen along the way. Lots of very scary things. And I'll share a little bit of that as we go along.
Excellent. Well, tell us which two wines you have selected to share with us tonight.
So the first one we're going to taste today is our rosé. And I've been making rosé now since 2007. Peggy and I, by the way, the name JM Cellars comes from, I'm John, I'm the J.
Okay.
The M is Peggy. Her formal name is Margaret. And it's not a really creative JM Cellars doesn't sound creative, but I can tell you I've had more people join my wine club because their names had a J and an M in it. It's an amazing thing. I didn't think that would be the case. But anyway, Peggy and I had a chance to go to France. We have a number of times, but one year we were there and we were in Provence. And I just thought, these rosés taste so much different than any of the rosés I'm tasting in the United States. Mm-hmm. And plus, we were having such an incredible experience there. I came back home and I thought, I really want to try that. So I found a vineyard that grows Cinsault. And Cinsault is this grape that it's a very large grape. It looks like a little plum.
Wow.
And it's very dark. In fact, it's called the common name for it that you'd see as grapes in a store would be the Black Prince.
Okay.
It's a very dark grape, but it has very thin skins. And with all that pulp and very thin skins, you get a color that is just really reminding me always of Provence. Mm. And so this particular vintage is 2020. So this was on vine last September. We harvested it, and the Cinsault came in beautifully. I mean, the numbers were exactly what I wanted from the sugar level, from an acidity level. The way I approach my rosé is I bring the whole clusters in. So it's the berries on the clusters, and we go through and sort to make sure we don't have any bad clusters in there. And then we load all those clusters into a big press and squeeze with the stems. And the reason I do that with the stems is if you destem it and you put all of the grapes in, I did this once, so I can tell you from experience what happens. You create a big giant block of pulp as you're trying to press it. But if you put stems in there, they act like little channels for the juice, and you can get a harder press and you get more yield that way. So we pressed it and basically juiced the grapes. The juice saw very little, if any, color from the skins of the grape. And then I fermented them in stainless steel for about 45 days. And that's kind of the trick with really good Provence-style rosé is you want to extend the fermentation as long as you can. So I chilled the tank. So I really fight the fermentation. I let the tank sits at about 58 degrees. And so when you're fermenting, you have yeast eating sugar, and the energy that is created dissipates as heat. So with a red wine, I'll start at, let's say, 68 degrees coming out of the vineyard. Within about 7 to 10 days, you can be up to the mid 80s to 90 degrees just with the energy that's created by that fermentation. So what we do with this is I chill the tank. I really fight the fermentation. Okay. You don't want to fight it too hard because then you don't want it to stop. So it's a delicate play for about 45 days. And when it's done, I actually blend a little bit of Syrah and a little bit of Grenache, and you get this incredible, beautiful color that reminds me of the river towns in Provence. Oh,
and it is absolutely beautiful. Definitely want to loop Chris Sawyer, our rock star sommelier. Give us your feedback. Welcome, Chris. You disappeared for a second. I was worried.
I don't know what happened to me, but I'm here, you guys. Whatever you need me for, I'm here. I love Cinsault. So I just waiting to say something about Cinsault. I love Cinsault so much, and I think that one of the things too, and John was touching on it. It's such an interesting grape. It is dark. We call it Black Malvasia, and it was kind of the old term from UC Davis. But, here in California, well, I'm not in California at this second, but I'm in Oregon. But in California, we have one of the oldest vineyards in the world, and it's called the Bechtold Vineyard. It's in Lodi. And, individual people buy rows of those grapes. There's Turley and all these different people that grow, that buy the grapes that were planted back in the 1885, how long these vines have been in the ground, and they can survive a long time. And I think the other place to really look at them would be South Africa, which it's one of the main grapes of South Africa, and in the lower part of France, where in the Languedoc area, it's very well known there too, but it has very interesting qualities, and making it into a rosé is true genius, John.
Yes, this is beautiful. I'm so impressed with this rosé. The florals, the strawberry notes on it. This is definitely one you want to load up on for the summer. There's no doubt. It's beautiful. I haven't been to Provence, but I can only imagine that this is essence of Provence in a glass. No doubt.
It's beautiful. It's great nose on it too. And you're right. The strawberries, they're wild strawberries, a little bit of raspberry. Once you get it in the mouth, it goes back to kind of the watermelon kind of thing. But I might go a little bit more towards Jolly Rancher watermelon, or else just give me some watermelon rind and we'll start talking, because it's got great acidity. It's very crisp. And, in Yakima Valley up in Washington is kind of how I got to know it too. But this is from Walla Walla, and obviously Walla Walla is a great place for the Rhone varieties. And this is really that kind of a variety that is blended with Syrah and Grenache and different things that it can really work with. But by itself, delicious.
Absolutely. This is a stunner. It's definitely a standalone. Of course, we know it would pair well with foods. John, what are some of your favorite pairings with your rosé? Peggy. That's a good pairing. Peggy, cheers to you. What does Peggy like to pair with the wine other than John?
I love that you asked that, because I do quite a few wine dinners where the chefs want to pair up with the wines, and we do pre-COVID, of course. I'd come to the restaurant or they'd come to the winery. It was really fun to do. Well, one of my favorite chefs is the head chef for a place called Duke's Chowder House in Seattle. And Duke's is an amazing restaurant. It's a family-owned business. They get the freshest fish in Seattle. It's unreal.
That's good to know. I haven't checked them out.
You got to go in and check out their menu. It's amazing. They just do a great job. And Chef Bill is a phenomenal guy who really does his research. So he came out when we were going to do a tasting together, and we were going to do the rosé, and he asked me, what's your favorite thing to pair with this? And I said, well, Peggy's favorite thing to pair with rosé is popcorn.
That's what Courtney just popped in, said popcorn.
Yeah, and he started laughing. He goes, that's what we're going to do for the first course. And I said, how are you going to do popcorn for the first course? He goes, you watch. So we got some tasting, and he had 3 different popped corns that were really gourmet, and then one that was just a standard popcorn. And so we did like a little taste test at the beginning. It was one of the biggest hits I've ever seen.
How fun. Popcorn's really fun to work with. And I've got some, Chef Mike C. I don't know, Chris, if you've had some chances to check out his gourmet popcorns, the fat infused, he had his like beef bourguignon and fried chicken, and these flavors are off the charts. Super fun. We've done a lot of movie nights where we did wine and popcorn pairing. So very fun.
Try this rosé with it. I think.
For sure. I was thinking, and Chris, this is a throwback. During Pink Out, do you remember Chef Lamb's fresh rolls with the smoked salmon and strawberries?
Absolutely, 100%. And, it actually made me think too, just the reference to popcorn, just because I think that really like sparkling wines, because it's got great acidity in here, this would be really nice with like pink Himalayan salts. We got really into salts. It was about, I'd put it at the early 2000s. Salts were all over the place. But you could really do some stuff. And really, before you started going into popcorn, I was thinking about ceviche because it can really support it. And you can, there's a lot of rosés out there. Don't get me wrong, but most of them can't go with ceviche. Come on, get real. They're too light, and this is the real deal. I feel like the acidity is so nice in here. It's so crisp, and ceviche would just be complemented by it.
Absolutely. Definitely excited to play with this and see what kind of pairings we come up with throughout the spring and summer. And I have a feeling I'll be popping over to definitely load up on some more.
just released this last week, and I could not believe how many cases of rosé were going out for last weekend.
I can. It's delicious.
It's super in. The trend is over about it being sweet. The kids never knew about the sweet ones, you guys. So they just think this is what it has always been, which it hasn't. But luckily we're at this different level. And the other one too that I would say would be a really nice pairing as we're getting into this season right now is beets. Especially when you use burrata with them and you use some fresh herbs, like even, great salads, like the pomegranate's a little bit out, but if you can get some nice raspberries and put it with arugula, some red onions and this, you got me. I'm sold. I want some right now,
I think it would be a really good pairing, and beets are tough. I mean, there are certain foods that are really hard, I think, to pair with wine. And beets are one of those, but I agree with you. And just a little bit of salt on the beets.
Be so good. Chris, what are some serving, like when you're serving rosé as a sommelier, what are some of your suggestions on how to chill it? What kind of glassware should you use?
Yeah, it can take a little bit more than a regular wine, which would be, really at 59 degrees, where you want to bring it out at cellar temperature and then let it open up. This can be, it's so good during the springtime and summer. And we really were just talking about how it just explodes. You put these, if it's a really good rosé, it's going to sell out pretty fast. I mean, we were just talking this Saintsbury and Carneros. I mean, those guys have made wine for so long, and they're like, oh, you know what? Our number one seller that sells out the fastest is rosé, or in their case, in Gris. But the fact is, it really comes in handy right now because it's not only great to pair with so many different types of food, especially springtime and summer foods when everything's blossoming, everything's so great. But it's also just great as a refresher. And I mean, this is what you want by the pool. You don't want a big, heavy Chardonnay. You don't want a heavy-handed kind of cab or anything like that. You want a pink wine that tastes this good. And so I think that really getting it a little bit chilled, bringing it out and letting it just, it's great.
It is really, really good. I know Chris cut out just a little bit there, but this is a beauty. Sydney Tanner is going a little off the rails here there in Woodinville, but she's asking to ask John what the tray stands for.
I can tell I have my wine club fans in here. This is so great. I've got to say too, if we've got our wine club on here and we've got my staff from the winery, I am so happy you're on. Thank you for joining tonight. So Trey, I make a wine each year that is named in honor of my boys. So Peggy and I have 3 sons. And back in 1999, we made a wine that was a blend of Cab, Merlot, and Syrah. Now you'd hear it called a CMS, but back then nobody was doing it. And I'm not going to say I was the pioneer of this, but the beauty of being an American winemaker is I don't have to worry about the government telling me what I can blend with what. If I were to make a Cab Merlot Syrah blend in France and I was found out, they would actually put me in jail because the Cab and the Merlot are Bordeaux grapes, the Syrah is a Rhone grape, and you are not allowed to blend those across. In the United States, we can do whatever we want, and it's really it's one of the things I love about American wines is you get some really interesting blends. So I did that in 1999. It was delicious. I wanted to name it for the boys, having them represent each of the grapes in the wine. And a friend of mine from Italy named Indro Neri, Indro said, well, you should call it Tre Fanciulli. And he did. And I said, Tre Fanciulli, that sounds fantastic. What is it? And he said, it roughly translates to 3 treasured lads. And I said,
oh, that's sweet.
That wine forever. Well, it sort of was. I still make it to this day. But when the boys were all in their teenage years at the same time, they weren't quite as treasured. So we dropped the Fanciulli for 2 years on the wine. And now they're all out of the house and on their own and living a great life, and they're Fanciullis again. So
That's funny.
It's now time to rate that wine.
Oldest is now 33 years old, and he's the Cabernet Sauvignon. His name is Jack, and Jack is big and bold, and it's really just the personalities fit the grapes. The middle son, Tom, is the one who's actually in pursuit of becoming a winemaker and to join me sometime in the future. He's working at the Napa Valley Reserve down in Napa Valley right now.
Excellent.
What I love with Tom is he's the Merlot. And, you know, Tom is a very sensitive, caring, emotional human being, just like a Merlot. And then the youngest one, Joe, is living in New York. He's 24 now. And to this day, if you ask Joe, what grape are you? He'll say, I'm Syrah and I'm spicy.
Ooh, I like it. I like it.
Thanks for the question, you guys.
Oh, you're very welcome. Well, thanks, Sydney, for asking it, for sure. And Simone saying, we got to get some of Chef Mike C's popcorn on this show. So I think that's a mission that we should get Mike C up here for the Washington extravaganza.
Exactly.
I think so.
Any extravaganza right now, that would be great.
Yeah, it would be great. So I have obviously, you transitioned careers, starting JM. When you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Boy, what did I want to be? Well, I can tell you that my dad was a heart surgeon, a phenomenal heart surgeon. And he wonderful man. He actually, a lot of heart surgeons have this kind of stereotype that they are not going to be that approachable, that it's what they do is godlike. And my dad never had that. My dad was the most amazing human being. He passed away a couple of years ago, but I kind of thought I'd be a doctor for a little while until he actually had me when I was 15 come in to watch him operate. And I thought I was going to be in the theater part of but he actually had me standing over the patient's head while he cracked the chest. Oh. And I came out of that and said, Dad, I'm sorry, I don't want to be a doctor. That's way too intense for me. So I ended up, the nice thing though about having a dad who is a doctor is he had a great wine collection. So I had a chance as a young person to drink some amazing Burgundies, amazing Bordeaux's, and I think that gave me some inspiration that I didn't know I'd need when I was starting this later on. But honestly, I graduated. I really wanted to move into something where I could take what I'm passionate about and who I am and express it into a product. And that's why the wine really resonated with me when we decided we were going to do our small business together. I got to tell you too, Peggy is the president of the company, and she has been an amazing natural leader in our company. We have 32 people that work for us. Wow. She has taken us through this incredible last 12 months that we've all had to go through. And our winery is stronger right now than it's ever been. And
congratulations. Good job, Peggy. Cheers to you. I know you're in the background. We just can't see you.
I give her all the credit.
Good team. And that's a testament, if you could really come out on the other side of this stronger, that's great leadership and great teamwork.
And that was the quote of the week.
And there you have it. Quote of the week.
I'll tell you said that, and I really appreciate it. This would never have been as fun a journey for sure if it hadn't been the two of us together. And why don't you come on in and say hi real quick?
Yay, Peggy.
Hello.
Hi, welcome. I'm so glad you joined us. You guys are a dynamic duo, and it's so refreshing to see like your dream that you guys created and built together, and know that there's another couple out there that can work together for as long as you have, almost as long as I have with my husband, and you're still standing. So it doesn't happen for everybody. So cheers.
Yes.
I tell people all the time that I'm the winemaker and I report to Peggy, and I have for 34 years. We celebrate our 35th
Cheers.
anniversary.
Well, cheers. Great. You guys are doing fabulous. Great wines, beautiful properties. What's the story behind the name Bramble Bump for the Woodinville property?
Sure. So Bramble Bump is a 7-acre piece of property that Peggy and I bought in the year 2000. And it may be the most important thing we did on this journey. To find a piece of property in Woodinville now, you'd never find it.
Mm-mm.
This wonderful elderly couple had owned the property. They were both horticulturalists, so they had actually planted 120 Japanese maples on the property, and they had planted over 400 rare conifers. And they had trails through it, but they were 87 and 85, and they hadn't lived at the location for 2 or 3 years. So things were a little run down when we first saw it. We jumped in and really brought the garden back to life by bringing a master gardener on. And the house was really perfect for what we wanted to do. We added the winery on the side and the back of the house.
Okay.
And, over time, it has become a really important part of JM Cellars. And it's called the Bramble Bump because the city thought it was kind of an inside joke when they were plotting the property because it was full of Himalayan blackberry. And so when we saw the name, we thought, that's a great name for a red table wine. So we have our house wine. It's called Bramble Bump Red. And it sells about as fast as the Cinsault Rosé does. It's a really good, I always know I've made the Bramble Bump correctly when Peggy looks at me after she tastes it for the first time, each vintage, and says, this is a problem. This is as good as your best wine. But it to be.
That's fantastic, and I love the name. I mean, it's very campy and sweet, and just a beautiful, fun nickname that has actually become kind of the moniker for you and your wine. And I love it. I think that's very cool. A lot of people saying, "Go Peggy, go John." You guys make a great team, so we couldn't agree more. Since we have both of you here, what would you say was the most surprising thing you learned about being in the wine industry?
For me,
Either one.
either one. Everyone has been, I don't know, I don't have a great answer for that. What I would say has been most gratifying are the relationships with other people in the industry or with our customers, who I even hesitate to call customers because there is sort of this feeling of family in a way, and that has just enriched our lives tremendously. It's huge. So I think that's probably for me.
I think for me, maybe the most surprising, in such a good way, element of this journey has been really getting to understand the workers in the fields. And the Mexican American community in the United States is so misunderstood, and they're so important to our success, to everyone's success. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you right now, I feel honored to be accepted into their community when I'm out there. When I get offered lunch, man, it's
It's a big deal.
It's the real deal.
No doubt. It's, these are all families. Each of the vineyards, so we have 8 vineyards that we source from, meaning the farmer, the owner, owns the vineyard, but I get the same blocks each year, and I get to manage those with them. And then we have our own vineyard in Walla Walla, which is our estate vineyard. It represents about 30% of our wine. But each of those vineyards has a Mexican-American family who is part of that vineyard. That's the core. And then during picking season, lots of uncles and aunts show up. And during the off season, it's the main core family. So you really get to know these incredible people who work harder than I can't even imagine working hard every day doing what they're doing. It is just backbreaking, and I just feel honored to be a part of it.
Well, we'll be sure and tell them that about my recommendation with the ceviche, because I think those families need to taste this rosé with some ceviche as soon as possible.
I love it.
Seems like a good idea for sure. Well, that was really touching and sweet,
Yeah.
and I love that you shared that because it is true, and that just made me so happy. So, well, cheers, you guys.
Cheers.
Well, it is about time to migrate on over to wine number 2.
We already have. Sorry.
I noticed. So tell us about this wine.
So this one is.
I'm gonna say goodbye, you guys.
Bye, Peggy. Thank you so much for popping in.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let me introduce this wine by saying this is a family-focused, hopefully multi-generational winery. Now we're small. We're definitely in that classification of craft winery, and I've really made Peggy and I have made a decision that we don't want to be big. Just to give you a sense of scale, I make about 7,000 to 8,000 cases of wine a year, depending on the yields for that year, which is about 150 tons of fruit. I'll pick that 150 tons all in September and October. And in that same 2-month period of time, Chateau Ste. Michelle, the largest winery in the state, will pick 137,000 tons of fruit, and they'll make about 8.5 million cases of wine.
Well, clearly it's a different caliber and category altogether.
It is, and I always tell people this, that it's amazing because they make such good high volume wine that's consistent quality, really great representation of what Washington State is. And they are our representatives throughout the world because they distribute everywhere. Yeah, I don't. I sell all of my wine out of our winery. So the majority of our sales are a part of our wine club and then the public coming in and tasting. So, but I love having Ste. Michelle representing us around the world. I do feel like I have some opportunity to do some things that they can't do because I'm that small and I've got time. I've got the one thing they don't have. I've got time during harvest. So over the years, Mike Janet gave me that really nice recipe at the very beginning. And I compare it a lot of times to cooking. If you like to make something and you get a great recipe and you follow that recipe and you use great ingredients and they're clean, they're clean. If you follow the recipe to the letter, you're going to make a really nice dish. And that's what I did for 5 years of my winemaking. I really followed. I was so meticulous about every aspect of that recipe. And those wines taste great to this day. But there's a point where you realize, you know what, I want to put more of myself into this.
Right.
You're a cook, you add a little oregano or whatever it is that is your thing. And now after making it 10 more times, it's your recipe. And people are asking you for that. Well, my recipe in wine has really been evolved by going to different places in the world and seeing how other people are making wine. We've gone to Spain, Italy, Portugal, South Africa, Australia, all over. And I get these great experiences with winemakers where they're super open to share what they're doing. So I'll just tell you briefly, on our red wines, I pick everything by hand. We sort in the vineyard. We then sort it again when it gets into the winery. And then we de-stem using a machine that I had designed and built in Italy that is the slowest de-stemmer in the United States. So I am the only one who has this, I think. But it simulates the way they de-stem grapes back in the 1700s and 1800s. It's not a machine that's picking up the fruit. It's very gentle, slow, but gentle, and it de-stems perfectly. So you have these the grapes are not macerated at all by the time they come off the vine or off the rake. And then those grapes drop down onto another sorting table, and this one vibrates. And I have 4 people who work for me who man that table every day during harvest, and they're picking individual grapes that are overripe or underripe out, and they're also picking any little piece of stem that may have come off during the deep stem. Then all those whole berries end up in a bin at the end. And if you've been to Europe and you've gone through and you've seen what small wineries do there, still to this day, I sanitize my feet and my legs, and I personally foot stomp all of my red wines.
Wow.
That allows me to do is really control the little bit that I can control in this whole process. I just break up about 15% of the fruit with my feet, and then we ferment with a whole bunch of whole berries. And there's a reason for that. I won't go into the detail right now, but I just wanted to give you a sense of, this is why I always tell people I am a New World winemaker making wine in an old world style, because
very cool.
A lot of those experiences that have evolved over time.
And thank you for washing your feet, by the way.
Yeah. Very, very important to wash your feet before this whole thing happens. Yeah.
You know,
it smells good though. I mean.
Do that as much.
Yeah, I think that, what I like about this is, going into it, on the back label, 78% Cabernet Franc, 22% Merlot. And as John was saying, I mean, Mike Janik, if you ask me about Merlot and one of the great winemakers who brought Merlot into being, other than outside of Napa Valley per se, would be Mike Janik. And I think that really what was happening up there in Washington State, I mean, to really put them on the map first. I mean, Riesling was kind of the first thing that it became known for. Then it was really Merlot. It wasn't Cab first. It wasn't, the Rhones is much more of a new thing. It was really about Merlot. And I think that's great as the blending part here. But I'm fascinated by this Cabernet Franc because, actually it was just a show ago that we did a great one with a blend of Cabernet Franc and Zinfandel, which seemed to make no sense. It was delicious.
But it worked so well.
Was so good. So it's really about the quality, once again, going back to what you said, John, about great ingredients make all the difference. And this Cabernet Franc is tasting divine right now. And I think, I'd have to look at the map about how it goes, but everyone compares Willamette Valley here in Oregon, where I'm at right now, to being on the same exact line as Burgundy. And so that's, that's commonality there. Well, if you actually went to Loire Valley, which is above that a little bit, that might be really where you're talking about in Walla Walla. And I think that there's something really big there, and it really tastes amazing in here, and especially because of that Cabernet Franc base.
I appreciate that. I think you're right. That is about the latitude is very similar. The difference is the Loire Valley is a lot cooler than where I'm.
Absolutely.
So this is Walla Walla is probably the hottest of the major regions that we have in Washington.
Yeah.
And I actually planted this vineyard. It's called Margaret's Vineyard. I'm no dummy. I named it for Peggy. And we planted it in 2007, and I decided that we beautiful north-facing slope. And I had a lot of people saying, well, why are you planting on a north-facing slope? You're supposed to plant on a south-facing slope. When people tell me that kind of stuff, that makes me want to plant on the north-facing slope every time. So I really love that we did that, because now with climate change occurring and it's getting hotter and hotter each summer, people are now on purpose planting on the north-facing slopes. Yeah.
Smart.
Red grapes. So I may have been a little ahead of my time, or just very stubborn. So
either way, it was a good decision.
It was, and we planted the vineyard originally as 15 acres out of 40 that we owned, and the 15 acres were Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cab Franc, Malbec, Petit Verdot, and Carmenere. So the six grapes were the grapes that I planted in the vineyard. And I always joked with people back then that, when you plant a vineyard, these are living beings, and you learn more about the energies of the earth and the energies of the sky and the sun and the moon and everything else. It's not magical and mysterious. It is energy, and you feel it when you're out there. And I always will tell people I have 25,765 kids that I take care of out in that vineyard. When I walk my vineyard, I walk every row, and I just look and observe and make sure that nobody's having a problem, because these are living beings. So anyway, I don't want to get too caught up in that, but I do want to say that Cab Franc, this vineyard's 1,200 feet up on a hill above Walla Walla Valley, and elevation with Cab Franc and heat do something really beautiful with this particular grape. It takes away a lot of the herbaceous kind of bell pepper character that is really designated as the Loire Valley type of Cab Franc. And so when you taste this, you get much more of that black cherry, black fruit character. And then the Merlot coming in with a little bit of black cherry character. I think the two together really complement one another. And, some of my favorite wines in the world are right bank Bordeaux's, which are typically either Merlot dominant or Cab Franc dominant. And they are so beautiful and smooth. And that's what I'm trying to make with this wine. And because this is one of my favorite wines off the vineyard, when my mother passed away in 2012, I'll just step back for a second and say, my mom, her name was Louise, she and my dad lived in the upstairs of the winery on the Bramble Bump that we talked about. They were so important to me, obviously, but they were important to the entire winery. My wine club knew them. All my staff knew them. I mean, it was an amazing experience to be able, and when Peggy and I bought the property, we asked them to move in to the upstairs. And I remember they were a little hesitant about moving until they came out and saw the place, and they said, "We're in." And I had my mom for her last 12 years there, and my dad for his last 14 years. And when Mom passed, I just felt like I really want to honor you with a special wine out of our estate vineyard. And I could have brought her a glass of vinegar, and she would have said it's the best thing she ever tasted.
Moms are great that way.
She was my biggest fan. I always joke with people that I truly was the only winemaker in the Woodinville Valley that had his mom making him lunch every day. So great experience and great person. Her name was Louise, but Peggy once again came through with a really good idea. She said, let's not call it Louise. Let's call it what your dad's nickname was for your mom, which was Louisa. And this is the first vintage, the 2018 vintage, where I included this picture. And this picture is special to me because it's my mom when she was 25 years old. I love the little ringlets in her hair. I love that she's looking up into the sky. And I really love that when my dad passed, the hospital gave me his wallet. This is the only picture of the wallet.
Oh, that's very sweet. Oh
So,
my gosh.
We're going to probably keep some form of my mom's picture on this forever and ever and ever.
I think so. I absolutely think so. That is so precious and a great story and everything that you would want a great wine to be and have. So absolutely do that. And it is delicious. But we are getting a lot of questions about what would we pair this with. So
yeah, my wife even is asking, hi, Simone, my wife. I'm here in Oregon. But yeah, definitely deeper, richer kinds of foods can go with this. It's got great cutting acidity in it too. It's got, it's funny you brought up the word bramble because I would put brambly blackberries in here too. It does have a little bit of a pepper note to it and definitely some licorice kinds of notes. So, I mean, I would have no problem. We have one that we our friends hunt deer, and there is an amazing venison sausage that we have that would be part of a pasta dish that I would do with this in a heartbeat. I would also do lamb with this, would be a very good one, but it also has that. It's not an overmade winemakers like, oh, this is all about me in the barrel. It's about the varieties. And if you really get into what Cabernet Franc is, if you pick it wrong, or if it's like, if you don't let it go far enough, it's going to be very green. And you mentioned, John, the bell peppers, and you don't want it to taste like bell peppers.
No.
This doesn't taste anything like bell peppers, but it does have that kind of savory note to it. So doing a stew would be amazing with this. And there's just a lot of dishes, but gamey dishes could go with this. But I would also go as far as risotto with wild mushrooms. I think that would be great.
Oh, absolutely. That would be really good. Well, I do believe I'm going to pair this with pot roast this weekend. So I'm very excited about that. But yeah, those braises, those rich, deep flavors, and also things that you can grill. So I wouldn't just, designate this for like the fall, winter season. Get some really good meats on the grill, get that smoke going. And this would definitely be beautiful with that as well.
Yeah, a little char would be great with this.
Oh yeah, maybe some good jerk chicken or something. This you get that smokiness and get it nice and charred and yummy.
Yeah.
That'd be.
What do you like with it, John? What's your faves?
I think what we typically do with this wine, one, because it's so sentimental to us, but two, because I think it goes well this way. A lot of times when people come over for dinner, we'll have one of my white wines or the rosé open to start things off, but there's always a number of people who don't want to drink white wine. And this is a great wine to start with, because you can have a charcuterie plate out and be able to have some prosciutto on there, some cheeses, some Stilton, and this will hold up to all of those. And if somebody doesn't want to eat all that, they just want to drink the wine, it drinks pretty well by itself. So I think it's a great way to start the night. Our nights sometimes end with it as well.
So how does it pair with s'mores?
I haven't done the s'mores with this one, but we do. We've got 2 fire pits at the Bramble Bum. And when we were doing events, when we were doing weddings, we would have the sticks out there with marshmallows and chocolate and with wine, and people would do s'mores at the end of the event. So it's pretty fun.
I might put some blackberries on, somehow fit them over the marshmallow, then put the chocolate on top of that. And then I think we're really in business now. Really.
I think so. I think you can kind of do like a PB&J s'more with do a little peanut butter in there and get the blackberries and the marshmallow. And yeah, I think that would be a good pairing.
I love those kinds of descriptions. I have a wine. It's from one of my favorite vineyards that I source from, Boucher Vineyard over in the Yakima Valley area. And I make it every year. It's 100%. Well, it's actually 97% Syrah and 3% co-fermented Viognier. And the wine is just savory, and but it has this dark kind of blackberry character to it. It's delicious, and I always describe it as taking bacon and just smothering it with some blackberry jam for breakfast. That's what that wine is. And I think
that sounds amazing. I mean, I never thought of a red wine for breakfast, but you got me at bacon.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. So our viewers at home, tell us what some of your favorite pairings are. We'd love to hear it. And also what you're sipping on tonight and any questions you might have for John or Chris. This is, it's just opening up so nice. That's what I kind of been really enjoying as we've kind of gone through the evening, is it just keeps changing and gets better as it opens up, and I love it.
It brings me back to one thing too about Merlot, and that's, remember the movie Sideways? Anyone see that one? Oh yeah.
I never did. I still haven't.
Oh, you got to see it. It's actually great in so many reasons, but it is a part in there that really goes into the Merlot, and his problem with the Merlot is he just finds out that his ex-wife is getting remarried, and that's not good. And so he's losing it there. He goes into the Los Olivos cafe and really is losing it and says, I need to go to the bathroom. He doesn't go to the bathroom. He calls his ex-wife and says, I want to come to your wedding. And she's like, oh, no way. And everything. And they've lost it. But it comes out that really his favorite wine was Merlot, and they used to love it together. And then so this is like a whole thing about that movie that a lot of people didn't get. But what's he drinking at the very, very end when he goes to the hamburger shop and he pulls out a bottle of wine? What's he drinking? Cheval Blanc.
Cheval Blanc, baby.
One of the greatest wines of the world. What's it made with? Cabernet Franc and Merlot.
Yep.
That's right. Right here. This is our little baby version.
I appreciate. Wish I could actually get the price tag they get.
No, I know that.
Right?
The new spring release, which is for futures on the 2018, I think maybe. But it's $4,500 a bottle.
Yeah.
6,000 cases of that wine, and it's sold out before they even really have it out in the market.
Yeah,
That's impressive.
Yeah, but that's what's the content here is. It's not exactly similar. It's got a little bit less Cabernet Franc in it technically than this does, but this is exactly what we're really talking about, is Cabernet Franc being the main component in here, with Merlot being the secondary one. And I think that's you have all this kind of flavor that Cabernet Franc can give you. Remember, Cabernet Franc is the father of Cabernet Sauvignon, married with another one called Sauvignon Blanc. So Cabernet Franc, Sauvignon Blanc, Cabernet Sauvignon, woohoo! But it's actually, Cabernet Franc is also the father, supposedly, of Merlot. So it's directly traced to that too. So Cabernet Franc has a lot of, the history of wine, especially red wines, has a lot to do with Cabernet Franc. And for you to really bottle this as a Cabernet Franc based blend, I think it's just genius.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, it's incredible, and I'm so glad you picked it to share with us. Some of our viewers, some are sipping the lovely Louisa right along with us, which is wonderful. So cheers, thank you. We've got some Barbera happening out there, and Miss Tanner is saying, ask John to tell us about his Carmenere.
Oh yes, please.
So do tell.
Big fan.
Good friends in this. This is great.
Well, I was out playing on the track with Sydney last week, so it's a small world.
I tell people all the time, they'll say, so you're a winemaker? And I'll tell them, no, I'm a storyteller, because I really feel like that's such an important part of what I do. And it's, as you're saying, Chris, about history. It's about being able to connect to that history in what you're doing. And so when I planted the Carmenere, I learned exactly why Carmenere wasn't used very much by the Bordeaux winemakers back in the 1700s and 1800s. It's a very peppery grape. And back in the early 1800s, Carmenere wasn't called Carmenere, it was called Grand Vidour. And Grand Vidour was the sixth of the 6 grapes of Bordeaux. And I'll tell you in a second how I know this, but in 1820, Chilean farmers decided that they wanted to plant high quality Merlot in Chile. They ordered plants from the French. The French sent them Grand Vidour plants, but told them they were Merlot plants and charged them accordingly. And I'll just put that one to the side for a second. In 1870 to 1880, phylloxera wiped out all of the vines in not only France, but all of Europe. And phylloxera is a louse that eats the roots of a vine and kills it slowly.
It's a nasty little bug.
All of those vines had to be pulled by the roots and replanted with rootstock that was phylloxera resistant. And just a little side note, the rootstock came from the state in the United States that most French people will never want to admit their rootstock came from. And that would be George Bush's Texas.
Wow.
So that rootstock brought over to France. They took cuttings from the original vines and grafted those onto that rootstock. But because the Grand Vidour was not widely accepted by winemakers, they actually didn't graft any rootstock with that. And so it was thought to be a lost grape.
Yep.
For 100 years, it was thought to be a lost grape.
Wow.
Till in 1994, down in Chile, there was some work done with UC Davis, and they were looking at these Merlot plants, and the leaf structure was wrong, and they determined that that was not Merlot. They didn't know what it was, so they actually took cuttings from those vines and ran genetics on it and determined that indeed it was not Merlot. They weren't sure what it was, so they went through two of the oldest wineries in Chile, their paper records, and were able to discover that indeed back in 1820, Chilean farmers had ordered Merlot plants, but had been sent Grand Vidour plants. When they planted them, it takes 3 years before you harvest your first fruit.
Right.
The fruit, they made it into wine. It was super peppery and spicy and smooth and soft, and it was the best Merlot they'd ever tasted.
It wasn't Merlot.
Yeah, it's even interesting too because there's the whole political thing down in Chile back in the old days, and the sons really never, like the next generation was never told about any of this. So this is how it really became a super duper mystery. But John is absolutely right. It was this whole thing in 1994, and how UC Davis went down there. The greatest leaf experts of the world started looking at this stuff and going, oh, so the success of Merlot from Chile, let's look at this. So it really isn't all because of Merlot. I get it. It's because of Carmenere is interplanted with all this Merlot here. And so it just became something really special. And that's kind of when I was getting into the wine industry and really getting out of UC Davis and really into the wine industry, this was a big topic. And I got to go down to Chile 3 times right in about a 5-year period and watch this real maturity of this. And remember, this was a little bit before everyone's all, oh, Malbec in Argentina. This was back in the 90s, and Carmenere and Chile was a big deal. And I'm glad you've got it up there in Washington. That's awesome.
You know, it's funny too, because in 1994, when it was discovered that it was Grand Vidour, the Chilean farmers, I think, were kind of pissed off that they had been kind of bamboozled by the French. So they did not want to call it Grand Vidour. So they came up with a name, and it's Carmenere. But, you know, in the United States, we never pronounce things correctly for other people's languages. So we call it Carmenere. Every Spanish-speaking person that I've asked says it's a fanciful name, but I think it actually might mean screw you in Spanish.
Maybe.
Really?
Not proven, but we'll find out. Oh my gosh. So where can we get these wines, John? Tell us.
You know, go to our website. We can ship to all states in the United States except Alabama, New Hampshire. I don't know why New Hampshire's in there. North Dakota, and of course, Utah.
Yeah. Good old Utah.
But yeah, just go to jmcellars.com. All the wines are listed there. We just redid our website. I love your feedback on how we.
It looks great, by the way. I was on it today. It looks really, really good.
You know, I really wanted. This is where I'm getting a little bit smarter as an old guy. I hired young guys to do that. So we
Crazy.
Two young guys build our whole website for us, and they're doing a bunch of other things for us too. We also have a new project in the wings that will be released in May. We're starting a brewery. And,
fun.
you know, the way the government worked, I couldn't do a brewery and a winery when I first started this. But 5 years ago, finally, somebody got smart and said, why can't you do both? And you've got so many assets that you can use across that would save money and make, you know.
Right.
So I hired one of the best brewmasters I've ever met. His name is Drew Seed, S-E-E-D. We're calling the brewery Hops and Seed. And the
Oh, cute.
letter is the S in C. Drew is going to get so much attention because he makes some of the best beer I've ever tasted.
That's really exciting. You'll have to keep us posted on how that goes.
Wow.
We are unfortunately at the end of the hour. So if you love the wines you've been sipping tonight, or you would like to get your hands on some, go to jmcellars.com and place your order and scoop up this rosé before it is gone. I'm going to tell you, this is not going to last very long. It is incredible. We are going to be back next week, April Fools, with a really fun episode. And Chris, stay online afterwards. I'll tell you all about it. So we are going to have so much fun next week. It's going to be off the charts. And join us. Come to CellarPass.com/TV to find out about more upcoming episodes. And of course, go to CellarPass.com to book all of your fun wine tasting experiences in Washington, Oregon, California, New York, Texas, Indiana, and all kinds of other states, Virginia too. So if you're going out wine tasting, check out CellarPass.com. Till next week, have a fabulous, fabulous week. Cheers.
Cheers.
You.
Thank you. So much fun. All right, you guys hang on line.